kitchen, and they had everything there for the hotel, which the housing authority wouldn't build for on any of these others, like Beaver Street and William Street. They don't have them facilities. So that was one of the proudest things. And there was another little thing, maybe in your mind. The firemen on Locust Avenue used to be in that little old wooden building. The paid firemen were living with the volunteer firemen, and they had part of the building which was the cellar. Paid firemen for the city of Danbury, and they were there for about 30 years. Nobody ever wanted to move them. And at that time, it just so happened that there was a gas station down on the Germantown Road near the tennis courts that was idle. And I thought that would be a very convenient place for a firehouse, sub-firehouse, because of the vicinity near the hospital and in that section of the town. And so we bought the building and we reconverted it into a firehouse. And we took these men that were living in actually a dungeon. Honest, it was a shame. And I was very proud of that little thing. Another thing, I was part of bringing in at least 2 or 3 housing developments, one on William Street, one on River Street, and the one on Main Street. They were big projects. You know, the mayor is in office for 2 years, and if he's fortunate, he gets elected again if he runs. In 4 years, it's surprising how long it takes to do these things. You have to, it's really frustrating. You think of something that you would like to have done, naturally the first thing that comes to your mind, you have to have the money, and you have to have the will to meeting after meeting and meeting after meeting, and finally get it done. So, at that time, we were bringing in industries in the town. We met with a drug company by the name of Boehringer Ingelheim for 2 years with their offices and their lawyers and whatnot. And we met with, the first 2 years I was in office, we finally brought them in. Boehringer Ingelheim was a German drug company from Germany. They have subsidiaries here in this country, but they wanted to come to Danbury, and we finally got them settled. They're part in Danbury and part in Richfield. And then, you all know, they're very popular right now because of the disaster that's happening in India. Union Carbide. I met with the Union Carbide people for over a good year. To get a big company like that to come in to a town like Danbury, we were fairly small then in comparison to what we are now. We're growing fast, too fast, I feel. And I was instrumental in persuading Union Carbide to come in. I was just one of the people that helped to bring them in. But and naturally, the state has a whole lot to do with it. If the state wants them in, they'll do everything. They'll give you the money to bring them in and everything else. But those were the big important things that happened in the short four years that I was mayor. I certainly want to mention this, that you had Mayor Gino last week. I was his city clerk for 6 years while he was mayor for 6 years. And well, that is where I got my knowledge of the city complex, the financial end, and budgets and departments and whatnot. And those 6 years were a tremendous education to me to be able to go into the mayor's seat at that time. And I'd rather hear more questions because I know you got a lot of them, so I'll stop there.
Number 2.
Did being mayor affect your family?
That's a good question. I happened to be married the second time. My first wife died. I married a widow with 5 children. imagine taking the plunge the second time and then getting 5 kids right away. But they were all grown up, and it has an effect. But I happen to have a wife that was very, very pleasant, a good sense of humor. She was well known. She was a nurse, and she was belonged to quite a few different societies. So I think that in running for election, with her popularity and her character, it helped more than it hindered me in getting nominated and elected. I got to say this, that any elected official who has a family and is conscientious in their duties of the elected official definitely has to curtail a great deal of his family life. He has to. And if he has a compatible wife or mate, it helps tremendously. Does that answer your question, sir? Next question.
Why did you get into politics, and why did you choose to run for mayor?
Why did I get into politics, and why did I run for mayor? Well, as I told you at the beginning, I come from a family of 10. There was 5 boys and 5 girls. And my father died when we were all quite young. In fact, I was 15 years old when my father died. And I couldn't go any further than high school. I was lucky to be able to finish high school. And my brothers and sisters all wanted to have a further education. So someone had to stay and help financially, since we had such a large family. And that was my chore, because there's an Italian custom. If your name is the same as your father, it's a custom that you take over when Pop passes away. It's an old custom. It was, in fact, with our family. And so, my brothers and my sisters, I have 2 sisters that became nurses. I have a brother that's a lawyer. I have another brother that was a professor in college, and another brother that was an accountant. So they all advanced their education, and I stayed back. And I always said, well, I got to do something with myself. With the amount of education that I have, I felt as if politics was a place for me to go into. But I will say that I never worked at the political game itself. I never joined any party as such and became a worker or anything. But I always felt as if I knew enough people. I was born practically and brought up here. I'd say that we lived in New York. I was born in New York, in the Bronx. And we came here when I was 5 years old. So you figure it out. I'm 74 now. So that means I've been here around 69 years in Danbury. 69 years in Danbury. So I was part of the growing up of Danbury. We used to have, where I lived, we used to have empty lots right on South Street, Main Street, empty lots all across there. Now look at what it is today. It's built up tremendously. So I knew Danbury really well, and I knew a great many people.
What was Danbury like when you were mayor?
What was Danbury like when I was mayor? In what regards, Joe? Do you mean
Industrial?
Industrial. Oh, a very good point. When I was mayor, industry was coming into this town so fast that it was fantastic. Before the war, I don't know whether you realize this, but this was a hat town. Only industry in the town was hats. They made hats. That's all. After the war, hatting seemed to die. The men weren't wearing the hats and everything else. And there's only one hat shop in the whole town. But our industry it was so diversified that Danbury started booming like mad, really. And so when I was mayor, I dare say that we were a healthy town, financially and otherwise. We were starting to grow with the industry. You know, a great many people say, oh, there's too many industries. But what made Danbury were the industrial complexes that we brought in. It helped our tax structure. It brought in finances to us so that we could improve. If we were a hat town, we'd be just a dull, what they call an old mill town. We would never progress. But the new industry helped us do that, and we have progressed tremendously. My philosophy when I was mayor was definitely the taxpayer was the brunt of the city, and what I mean by that is they had to pay for the upkeep, the advancement, the forward progress, or the stationary progress. And the taxpayer had to pay for that. And my belief was that a slow progress in that particular thing, I try to keep the mill rate down. We were growing though, that was the problem. We were growing fast, and it was hard to upkeep our water and our sewer and our roads and things like that. And so, but with the industry coming in, it was giving us money to play with. And when I left the office, I think it was one of the biggest surpluses we ever had. We had over a $2 million surplus with the new taxes that were coming in with the industries that were coming in. If you take Union Carbide, the taxes that we get alone from Union Carbide is over $2 million. Taxes. Can you imagine how many homes we have to tax to get $2 million? So, I think that it was a good era. We did, you know, remarks have been made that previous administrations weren't very energetic and they didn't do too much for the city and this, that, and the other thing. And that hurt me. I know that it hurt quite a few of the mayors in the past because they did what those times called for. And they did progress. They didn't hold back. We've been very fortunate in Danbury that there's never been any scandal with the politician in the political sense. Most of you read the paper every day with politicians and councilmen and aldermen and city clerks and whatnot, and mayors create a scandal and hurt a city. But Danbury's been very fortunate that way, so that every mayor has done their little bit to progress and to bring Danbury what it is today.
Okay, who's next? Bridget?
What's your feelings about the riots at Danbury High School in the 1970s?
You did talk about the riots at Danbury High School a little bit. You went up there. I remember you were at Danbury High School when that actually occurred. Maybe if you could just, what were your feelings that morning when you were there and you saw what was going on?
Well, I'm going to be very frank with you. I felt as if people that were responsible in the administration of the school system didn't carry it out too well in my book. And that meant from the superintendent to the assistant superintendent to the principal and whatnot. I won't say that it would have been an easy job for them to do it, but I don't think that, I know that I was there for the 2 or 3 days that it all lasted, and I was there pretty much all day. It seemed as if there was a fear, and that was the worst thing in the world for it to happen. fear. You have fear when there is an unrest. You've lost it. You've lost it. You've got to be with them and find out what it was all about. The way it was carried out, there were things and incidents that happened with the police that I didn't approve of, but it was just an unfortunate thing. That's all I can say. I think that some of the police were out of line. Maybe my own police chief was out of line. I don't know. But that's the way I felt. You asked about the responsibility, and I think that the responsibility primarily was on the administrative end, and that means the superintendent, the principal, and a few more were, there was fear there, and we could see it. They were hiding in rooms and whatnot that I didn't like. Next question.
Next.
When you were in high school, what was it like growing up in Danbury?
When I was going to high school?
Yeah.
Kathy?
When I was going to high school, we had what we called 2 sessions. And of course, you got to remember, in those days, there were not near the amount of students that we have today. When I was going to high school in 1925. Can you count back that far? 1925. I graduated in 1929. And that is about 55 years ago. I graduated from high school. And Main Street School was the high school at that time. And they used to have 2 sessions. Morning session for the juniors, sophomores, juniors, and seniors, and the freshmen would come in the afternoon. That was the high school. Then they built a high school on White Street. And that's where I graduated from. But the students, the number in comparison, I don't know the number of students that we have in the city now, but in comparison it was very, very small, very small.
High school now is what, about 1,400, Joe?
Well, it's more than that.
More than
Well,
that?
when they first started, Joe, they were over 2,000.
Yeah, we're upwards of 3,000. 3,100 was our highest. And then we're down around, I'd say about 1,700 or 1,800 kids up there now.
And that's one of the reasons why riots are caused when you have 3,100 students in a school, one school. You can't control them. My philosophy was, at the time when they were talking about building a high school, is to build one high school in the West End and one in the South End and separate them. Not to imagine the transportation of bringing up all the students in buses all at one place and then taking them out. Separate them. Have 1,200 here, 1,200 there would be perfect. But we were outvoted. Next question.
When you were in these schools, how does it change the difference between the schools now and when you were in school?
Well, remember I told you that I was going to school 50 years ago, especially in grammar school. We used to have one teacher that taught us everything. Arithmetic, spelling, geography, history, music, everything. One teacher for about 35 or 40 students. Now you have a teacher for history, and you have a teacher for geography. Everything is different now. I mean, you have the teachers union took care of that very well. But it was completely different. And I've got to say this, that 50 years ago, the students and the teachers, the difference between today and then at that time, the teachers had an authority where the students were afraid of them, more or less.
Well, they're terrified of us, Mr. Ducibella, aren't you?
They did.
Oh, yes.
They did.
Yeah.
And if you,
Right? You guys are scared of us?
No.
today, the students aren't afraid of them, and they shouldn't be. And they shouldn't be. They should respect the teachers, yes, but they shouldn't be afraid of them. But in our day, we were afraid. In fact, if we came home and said, you know that teacher gave me a beating because I did such and such thing. You know what would happen? You get another beating at home because you did something wrong at school. But it was entirely different setup. I think we've come a long ways. I mean, the world, society demands that we were more or less, the school system, the education system wasn't progressed and open as it is today. The world demands it. I mean, all over the whole world, science, everything is opened more than it was then. Maybe the need wasn't there at that time.
Are you familiar with this program and how it works?
Yes, I'm familiar because the kid here has shown me a few things, and I listen to him once in a while. I used to listen. He used to be my counselor at one time, you know.
Really? Did he listen?
No, but I'll tell you something. I'll tell you something. He was the son of my sister-in-law, my first wife. And so when he came into the organization and became council, they said, "Oh, Pepe will have it made. He's got his uncle is going to be the mayor or the city clerk or whatever it was." Well, you know what? He gave me the hardest time, and I gave him the hardest time. And the people were so amazed because, you know, they felt as if, oh, Pep will get anything he wants. But Pep was, Mr. Pepin, was very strong-minded. He said what he believed, and he wasn't never afraid. And a great many times he would embarrass me to the extent where I didn't expect that he was going to say what he was saying, although it was right. I mean, I wasn't, but I was surprised. He never pulled any punches. He was always out in front.
He hasn't changed.
He hasn't changed. No,
Yeah.
well, I don't think we do change. And he's getting older, you know. He's not the young kid that he used to be.
Yes, he is.
His hair is falling out. Next question.
Danbury seems to be changing. The fair is gone, the mall is coming. How do you feel about that?
It's too bad that the fair had to go, but money answers a lot of things. And when you can get $25 million for a piece of property, I think the temptation is there. You asked me about the mall. I personally am not for the mall. You might say, why?
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 Why? Everybody. Why?
Well, I want you to ask me why, because I'm going to tell you. I happen to know the ground out there when the floods were out in that particular section of the city, and that becomes a lake. A lake. Now, you can't tell me that they're going to put in 150 stores over there and that lake and that flood isn't going to affect it, number one. Number one. Number two is, I love the city of Danbury, and I'm afraid very, very strongly that it's going to erode our little town, Main Street, White Street, our stores. We have at the present time enough of shopping centers. Berkshire, North Street, now we've got on the Newtown Road, we've got about 3 or 4 shopping centers there. We have shopping centers on the outskirts in Brookfield, in Bethel. We have them all around us. Now this big shopping center is going to come over where the fairgrounds are. We aren't big enough, and you're not going to, don't tell me you're going to drag people from Norwalk, Stanford, and White Plains to come here. They have their own shopping centers. They have their Lord & Taylor's. They have their large stores, all in those places where people from here go there. Now, a lot of people are not going to come to Sears and Roebuck's. It's going to be here. Macy's, I think it's Macy's. Penny's might be there, yeah. I mean, those stores have the attraction where we're going to pull people from all over the state to come here. No way. And so, if these people go there, what's happening here? If they stay here, what's going to happen to the mall? They're going to have between 125 to 150 stores there. From now, from what I understand, from reliable sources, they're going to charge approximately $45 a square foot. $45 a square foot for a little store that it's going to be murder. I talked to a few business people who thought they might like to go over there, and when they heard that it was at least $45 a square foot, they said it couldn't possibly be. $45 a square foot. If you have the average store, how many square foot is here? You're a good math boy, Mr. Pepin. How many square foot right here?
Probably pennies like that. Let's take 200.
200 square foot.
$45 a square foot. What does that come to?
Mom was saying.
$900.
$900? $900.
Can't be 9,500.
Yeah.
A year.
Wow. A year? Are you talking about a year or a month?
Well, a month.
It's a month.
95
It's about
to
9,000.
That seems way out of whack.
Yeah, it does. It does. You're talking about 9,000 a month, aren't you? Yeah.
Right, it's going to, this is what I understand now. Because someone who wanted to go over there, he has a little store and he wanted to go over there, and he was told it would be at least $45 a square foot.
Do you see Danbury, downtown Danbury, turning into a deserted wasteland? Or is that...
If the mall goes over, yes. If the mall goes over. There's certainly been people who will still come downtown, but how much money can this area spend in our present shopping malls? We have a couple of big shopping malls there on the road to Newtown. Now we got them on both sides. And then we got Danbury, and we got North Street. How much money can the people in the area, there's 65,000 people, we'll include Bethel and New Fairfield if you want to, 100,000 people? Then they're going to put 150 stores at the mall? No. My personal feeling is that it's a boo-boo-doo-boo. That's my personal feeling.
Next.
Next.
What were the good and bad points about being Mayor of Danbury?
Well, the good points are that the average person has to have a little ambition. He has to have a little ambition. And as I said before, I didn't have very much of an education, and all my brothers and sisters did. And I said, well, what avenue can I go? And so the ambition was I wanted to get into politics and become mayor. I felt that I like people. You gotta like people and respect people. And you gotta respect their opinion. Whether it's 100% against what you think, you respect them. Give them a right to have their opinion. And they should give you a right to have your opinion. So that's one thing. I says, I want to try. And I tried. And even my own family was very surprised that I became mayor. Because, as I said before, I didn't have any of the political background. My family didn't have any political background. And that was, and as I say, when I was city clerk, I enjoyed being city clerk because the responsibilities weren't there. So all I could do is just try to help people. They would come in and want a direction in regards to zoning or fishing license or fishing permits. It helped people. And it's surprising how many people came in looking for advice. And that was it. Then when you became mayor, the responsibilities were tremendous. I mean, you had the community to think about. You had all the problems that the police department, the fire department, the public works department, people would call up and their road was icy and it wasn't plowed and all that, and you'd get all that.
They call you at home? Would they call you at home?
No,
That happened?
When Mr. Arconti was mayor, he had a phone at home. And he used to get calls at 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the morning. And naturally, having his family there, and he had about 3 or 4 young children there, it was quite disturbing. And then you would always get the person that was a little obnoxious to call it. You would have to be obnoxious to begin with to call you up at 2:30 or 3 o'clock in the morning. And that was quite disturbing. So I said to him, I says, Gino, I'm going to have an unlisted phone. He says, oh, you shouldn't. I says, I'm going to have an unlisted phone. So I had an unlisted phone, and the phone in the telephone book was under my wife's name, and she kept her maiden name, so they couldn't find me at home, and it was perfect. It was perfect. There's a few people who did know my private number, there's no question about it. I mean, the responsible people in the city government knew my number. But I mean, as far as the public, the cranks and the crackpots that would call you about so many little silly things that the public works didn't pick up their leaves and all that jazz, so they would have to call the mayor about it. Today, of course, with the mayor's administration, he has a great deal of personnel around it that we didn't have. And I think he has at least about 7 or 8 in there.
What was the economic and business situation while you were mayor?
The economic and business situation in the city of Danbury when I was mayor was very, very good. We were high on the list in Fairfield County. Work, unemployment was up on a high level. And Danbury, as I say, was very, very fortunate. We had a very diversified industry in town, so that if one was slow, there was another industry that was doing very well. I'd say that the economic situation in the city of Danbury was one of the highest in the state of Connecticut, and it still is. It has been. It continues to be. I think the average income was way high on the list, and all in all, I'd say that Danbury, during my administration, before and even after today, is still very high on the list in the state of Connecticut.
I think we have time for one more question. Who had the last one on the list? Okay. Steve?
You want me to read this one?
Yeah.
What makes Danbury unique and why?
What makes Danbury unique and why? One of the reasons why Danbury is unique is the way it happens to be situated in the state of Connecticut. We're very near New York State, we're very near New York City, and we're the gateway to New England, so to speak, because if anyone wants to go to Rhode Island or Massachusetts or Maine or Vermont, they more or less have to come through Danbury, and it makes...
So from how 7 and 6 meet in Danbury, right?
6, 84, 95, Turnpike. So it's very unique in that respect. And that's one of the reasons why a great many industries have been coming up into Fairfield County, because they're near New York City and the accessibility to it. One of the reasons why Union Carbide came up from New York City, they were on Park Avenue in New York City. And least 2 hours to get to work. Has anybody been to New York City?
Yeah, I think we all have, last week, yeah.
Oh, yeah?
Yes, there's one.
Well, you know what a hodgepodge New York City is. So these people were going to work there every day, and it was taking them, most of them, 2 hours. There was 3,500 people that were working in the main headquarters in New York City on Park Avenue. And most of it was taking them 2 hours to get there. Now that they moved up here in Danbury, now they've lived in Greenwich, Stamford, Norwalk, all around. It only takes them a half hour to get there without the hustle and bustle of New York City. Where did you go in New York City?
Manhattan.
Manhattan?
Yeah.
Did you go to a play, a show, or?
Oh, we went shopping.
Oh, yeah? Good. And so that's what makes Danbury unique. Does that answer your question?
Thank you.
We got one more, huh? What do I see for Danbury's future? All I could see is bright stars for Danbury, but I just hope that we stop shortly, because the ground that we have available for buildings and whatnot is getting very, very small. And we are now about 65,000 people. And I feel that Danbury's future, I don't think that we've reached the top, but we're close to the top now, and that we should level off. I hate to see it where they start throwing buildings up in the air and we become overcrowded, because it means that we have to start building our water supply system, our sewer supply system, increase our police department, our fire. And so I think we've gone far enough. I only can see good things about Danbury's future. I think that's about it then, huh?
Dennis?
Okay, I'd like to thank you, Mr. Ducibella, for sharing your time with us and giving us this
It
interview.
was a pleasure. I haven't enjoyed anything as much as this in a long, long time. I used to go around to different organizations and talk, but you know, you're talking politically most of the time. You're trying